What if this was the last chance for a golden veteran to prove he can still shine? In an arena soaked in tension from the hottest series of the first round, one name rose from the shadows. Max Pacioretty, former captain of the Montreal Canadiens. A hero in Las Vegas, now wearing blue and white, steps onto the ice as if every second could be a farewell. Or maybe a rebirth. At 36 years old, with a body that's endured surgeries, devastating injuries, and invisible pain, he's not just facing the Senators, he's facing time, doubt, and his own legacy. But what if this series between the Leafs and Senators is just the surface? What if Toronto, while fighting to advance in the playoffs, is also quietly engineering a behind-the-scenes move, silent, strategic, where Pacioretty isn't just a returning veteran, but a trade piece carefully placed on the chessboard? Before we dive deep into the backstage of this possible move, let's remember who we're talking about. Pacioretty is more than a respected name in the NHL. He was the captain of one of the Leafs' fiercest rivals for 6 seasons. He embodied the spirit of the New Vegas franchise in their inaugural campaign. And now in Toronto, he finds himself in the hardest role of his career, a veteran with no guarantees, no long-term contract, chasing not just respect, but perhaps one final, great chance to leave a mark on a franchise's history. But why is he here? What led a player with his resume to accept a tryout deal, fight for a roster spot, and only now in the midst of a playoff series return to the lineup? The answer begins to take shape in silence. Pacioretty was asked about the past 75 days, about the waiting, the recovery, the anxiety. He paused and refused to answer, not for lack of words, but because some pain doesn't fit into sentences. And yet, he said everything with one phrase: "This is why I'm here. Now I need to help the team win." And in this moment of return, one that should have been purely emotional, a new narrative began to unfold. Rumors started to circulate among insiders and analysts. Pacioretty might be in the showcase. If he performs well in the playoffs, the Leafs may choose to capitalize and use him in a strategic trade, either later in the postseason or early this summer. And if you follow this channel, you already know when the rumors start heating up in Toronto, it's because something real is brewing. Before we go on, this is the perfect moment to remind you, if you enjoy deep content like this, where every rumor is treated like a chapter in a saga, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Here we go beyond the news, we build stories with you. And the NHL's backstage never sleeps. Now, let's look at the facts. Pacioretty was slotted into the third line, alongside Max Domi and Bobby McMahon. He took the spot of Nick Robertson, who had been one of the team's rising offensive pieces. Leafs coach Craig Berube said Pacioretty had earned the opportunity, that he stayed committed even while sidelined. But the subtext is clear. This is his chance to prove there's still gas in the tank. And to draw attention, and the eyes, came the Colorado Avalanche, known for bolstering their depth scoring during playoff runs, are monitoring available veterans. The Carolina Hurricanes, familiar with the player, might also express interest depending on how Pacioretty's physical condition evolves. The central point: health. After 2 Achilles tendon ruptures and an undisclosed injury that's kept him out since February, his return is being watched with caution, but also with hope. Behind the scenes, the Leafs face a tough dilemma. Pacioretty is respected. He has chemistry with locker room leaders, especially Austin Matthews, who highlighted the veteran's charisma, passion, and calming presence. In tense times, Pacioretty's easy laugh and steady demeanor help keep the group united. And at the same time, he carries the experience of someone who's lived through every phase of a team rebuilds, a sense collapses, and rebirths. But what if this story is also about knowing when to say goodbye? If Pacioretty performs well in the next few games, his market value rises. And Toronto, facing cap constraints and seeking flexibility for 2025, could benefit by trading the veteran now while his stock is high. Imagine both paths. Without a trade, Toronto keeps a quiet, experienced leader for critical moments. With a trade, they gain draft capital or a young prospect who can help keep the core competitive. In either scenario, the impact is real on and off the ice, but there's more. Pacioretty's presence on the roster also says something about the culture the Leafs are trying to build. Players who love the game, who fight through pain and keep coming back, who don't just chase contract glamour, but the chance to be in a locker room again. That kind of passion is contagious and strategic, and that's why the story is far from over. Could Pacioretty be traded? Yes. Could he also become the unlikely hero that leads the Leafs on a historic run? Also yes. Or maybe he simply gets to live out his final dance in peace, surrounded by teammates who respect him. But the fact remains, the clock is ticking. And the NHL's eyes are fixed on Toronto. Now I ask you, if you were Brad Treliving, would you keep Pacioretty on the roster or use this chance to gain trade value? What kind of Leafs team do you want to see in the future? More veteran, or more youthful, more emotional, or more strategic? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you liked this deep dive, get ready. The next one is going to shake Leafs Nation. How do you trade the future without destroying the present? That's the question haunting the Toronto Maple Leafs at this very moment. Because behind the scenes, far from the spotlight of high-stakes games, a quiet conversation is starting to echo through the halls of Scotiabank Arena. Matthew Knies, the rising star, might be at the center of one of the toughest and most controversial decisions of the Brad Treliving era. What if the price to keep the championship window open is sacrificing the player who best represents the future of the franchise? It's a classic dilemma, a choice between now and later. But in Toronto, where every season without a Stanley Cup feels like an open wound, time is not an ally. Patience is not infinite. And the fans know, at some point, someone will have to pay the price to understand the magnitude of this possible move. We need to take a brief dive into the past. Toronto is a city used to believing, to hoping, to hurting. The most iconic hockey team in Canada, and one of the oldest in the NHL, has been stuck in a title drought that dates all the way back to 1967. And every time a young prospect emerges, the memory of rushed trades and future stars who bloomed elsewhere resurfaces. In 2021, the Leafs gave up a first-round pick in a deal with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus selected Carson Suhlmans, a promising defenseman from the Brooks Bandits, who has yet to make his NHL debut. Meanwhile, with the 57th overall pick in the second round, Toronto took a gamble on a kid from Phoenix few believed was ready, Matthew Knies. At the time, scouts were split. His stats in the EHL were solid, but not spectacular, 42 points in 44 games with the Tri-City Storm. There were also concerns about his skating and ability to create plays at a pro pace. Many experts saw Knies as a long-term project. But Kyle Dubas and his scouting team saw something rare, something stats couldn't measure. Now, nearly 4 years later, that pick looks like a stroke of brilliance. Knies not only developed at the University of Minnesota, but also represented the U.S. at the Olympics and World Juniors, all before playing an NHL game. He experienced things most players never do in their entire careers. Before even debuting at the pro level, his first NHL game came on April 10, 2023, against the Florida Panthers. And he hasn't stopped growing since. 4 points in that year's playoffs, 35 points the next season, and now, in 2024-25, he's hit a new level, 29 goals and 58 points, skating alongside Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. But with that meteoric rise comes a new problem. Knies' entry-level contract expires on July 1, 2025. He'll become a restricted free agent, meaning Toronto still holds control, but will need to pay, and pay big, to keep him. If you're a Leafs fan, you already know this story goes way beyond stats. It's about building, about identity. Knies has become a fan favorite, not just for his skill, but for his connection. Like Austin Matthews, he's from Phoenix, a desert kid who became a symbol of hope on Canadian ice. That's why this channel exists, to tell stories like this one, to dive behind the curtain and bring you what TV doesn't show. So if you've made it this far, drop a like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Because in this community, we live hockey beyond the boards. And you're part of that. Now, let's get to what's really shaking up the Leafs front office. According to sources close to management, there's a growing sense of urgency in Toronto. The contracts of Matthews, Marner, and Tavares are putting pressure on the salary cap. Marner enters his final year. Tavares, the team captain, could also be nearing the end of his Maple Leafs chapter. And Knies, whose market value is soaring, has become the franchise's hottest asset for the future. Or as a trade chip, the dilemma is brutal. Keeping Knies might mean losing Marner or Tavares soon. Trading Knies, on the other hand, could fix immediate needs, especially on defense, still the team's weakest link. Teams like the St. Louis Blues and Anaheim Ducks have already shown interest. One name gaining traction: Jamie Drysdale. Young, talented, with massive upside. And someone who could transform Toronto's blue line overnight. But this wouldn't be a simple trade. Knies' impact in the locker room and among fans is huge. Any move involving his name will be scrutinized by media, supporters, and even players. Brad Treliving, the general manager, knows that. And he's at the center of this crossroads. He was hired with a clear mission: bring the Leafs a championship. And that might require unpopular decisions. Trading Knies may seem like madness. But in Toronto, the weight of now or never has never been heavier. The real question is, where do you draw the line between building a dynasty and going all in for one cup? Without Knies, Toronto loses a vital piece of its rebuild. They lose youth, energy, a talent that many believe could become one of the NHL's best power forwards. With Knies, the team may have the league's best offensive trio, but risks remaining defensively fragile, repeating past playoff failures. It's a chess game of consequences. And every move matters. Now I want to know, if you were Brad Treliving, what would you do? Would you trade Knies for a real shot at winning now, or hold on to the kid, even if it means losing veterans and reshaping the roster? Drop a comment below. Your opinion matters, and it might even show up in the next video. Subscribe now, because the ice is just starting to shift. And here, we're always ahead of the play.